Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to today's Economy and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is the first meeting of 2022. Today's meeting is being held online to continue to keep everybody safe during this winter period. The meeting is being broadcast live and will be available on the Council's YouTube channel for later viewing. Just a reminder that members of the press and public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items, of which we are not expecting any today. So we move on to the next item of the agenda, which is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
No, Chair, I've not received any.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is declarations of interest. Although we're not formal in this meeting, I'd like to take an opportunity to aid transparency and ask members to declare any interests, if any. Okay, I can't see anyone indicating that they'd like to declare any interest. So we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is our main item for today. We have the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills and Culture with us today to provide an annual update. I'd like to welcome Councillor Jane Francis, who is attending alongside Ilgan Yusuf to give an update on the work that's being carried out to upskill citizens and improve skills levels, as well as employability. Councillor Francis has provided us with a report that's been sent out to members along with the agenda. So I'd like to hand over to Councillor Francis and Ilgan to highlight some of the key points on the report, and then we'll open up for a discussion. So over to you, Councillor Francis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to everybody, and a very happy New Year to those I've not said hello to. It feels very strange wearing these glasses, but I'm going to carry on with it. I hope you've had the opportunity to have a look at a fairly hefty report that's been circulated previously. And we're going to go through a presentation with you this morning. There's a lot of information there, a lot of facts, lots of figures. I think it would be helpful to both myself and officers if we could take any questions at the end, if that's okay with people. So I'll start off by way of introduction. The aim of this presentation is to complement the written report, which has already been shared with Scrutiny. With an expanded focus on the jobs and skills plan highlighted in the paper. So the aim of the action plan, just go to the beginning, thank you. The aim of the action plan is to focus on the range of actions that need to be taken to secure impact over the next 18 months. And that includes longer term barriers. This is not another new strategy. The aim is to set out how the relevant recommendations from a number of strategies can be implemented and to bring partners together to help drive progress and unlock barriers. The plan sets out the major actions either proposed or underway together with the lead organisations in 4 distinct categories, which are summarised below. The actions focus on what can be delivered now and over the next 18 months, and the actions form a mix of things that will have impact on both the short-term and long-term issues. To be effective, the city must focus on the structural issues as well as those made more acute in the context of COVID-19, which we're still living with. Next slide, please, and we'll go through some of the relevant strategies which are covered. You will all be aware that Birmingham has a number of distinctive characteristics that require a different approach to the labour market intervention than most other parts of the UK. The evidence and outcomes to meet them are summarised in this second slide. These issues are concentrated in specific parts of the city. Claimant counts are reducing much more slowly in Birmingham than in other core cities in the West Midlands. And the earning gap below wages between men and women is greater than in the core cities. Job density in the city is still low, but vacancies are higher in Birmingham than anywhere else in the West Midlands, and higher than the overall number of people out of work. The number of people on universal credit who are actively seeking work is lower as a percentage of the cohort than elsewhere. Next slide, please. So we're aware we're still living with the pandemic. We know that COVID and lockdowns hit Birmingham citizens harder than other parts of the country. But the communities of Birmingham already faced greater barriers before the pandemic than elsewhere. Persistently high unemployment, with the highest rates of unemployment among the core cities, and at least double the UK average since 2010. So the groups worst affected include Black and minority ethnic people, women, young people. Those are also those most affected by COVID spike in unemployment, with higher concentrations of unemployment and economic activity in BAME communities and for women than elsewhere. The next slide, please, where we're going to look at earnings.
Sorry, Councillor Francis, it's not forwarding on mine. I'm just going to reboot it again. Just bear with me.
Thank you. Shall we give Ilgan a couple of seconds?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sounds great.
Right.
We're on slide number 4, so I'm looking at the one, we've just done that one, Ilgan. We're looking at earnings, number 4.
Okay, for some reason, it's just not going forward on mine.
Okay. I'm wondering if Rose might be able to take over. So sorry about this, everybody.
Yeah, let me have a go.
I'll just give Rose a couple of minutes, see if this is a possibility. Technology, don't you love it?
Wonderful.
Right, we've got that up. Is that you, Rose? Yes, Rose, you're hired.
Apologies.
Thank you very much. So, very good introduction. We now moved on to look at earnings. And what I want to say in support of this slide is, given that these entrenched labour market issues, a number of implications for wider policy are clear to my mind. Creating jobs and maximising capital investment alone will not address the large numbers of people who are effectively underemployed and have very low pay. This will require additional action to link people up to the economic activity and the opportunities that exist. Higher level skills are important for progression and overall productivity / competitiveness, but the unemployment crisis in Birmingham is limited to a lack of higher skills. Entry-level jobs in the hospitality, healthcare, leisure and construction sectors have all faced recruitment challenges, and this is a problem that we can see nationally. Given that SMEs employ large numbers of people, particularly in target sectors, then new ways have to be found of linking up employers and people. And this is likely to include place-based and sector-based approaches. The potential for action by major anchor institutions on entry-level jobs is clear, and things are happening. So this includes, we move on to the next one, Rose. Thank you. So this next, thank you. We're now looking at NEETs by ward. We know that there's been a significant problem with NEETs in Birmingham. The source, the data here is the local authority tables, September 2021. So during spring and summer terms in 2021, 1513 careers guidance interviews and career plans were produced for Year 11 referrals within our traded schools. Over 5,709 students aged 16 to 18 have had careers advice given on a one-to-one basis during 2021. So NEET wards, as we know, we've been here before, are very much linked to areas of deprivation across the city. The challenge is to engage with NEET in year 12 at school and turn the participation status around so that young people do not become further disengaged from the education in year 13. Data to support targeting of resources on an informed approach basis has led to a live, flexible, responsive approach. All known NEET young people have an allocated careers advisor from Birmingham Careers Service, with delivery taking place at a range of venues, including the Library of Birmingham, youth centres and community venues, plus a full online digital offer if that's preferred by young people. Individual staff with individual targets focus on outcomes, and delivery is supported via ESF, European Social Fund funding, and Birmingham City Council General Fund. And demand is high and the caseload remain high. Next slide, please, Rose. Now we have take a drink, excuse me. A number of not known status by ward. The overall headline data in the main report, the risk of NEAT indicator process, shows year-on-year improvements. So progress in reducing the numbers of not known figures has gone from 7.4% to 5.1% over 5 years. And this has been possible due to the team having a greater focus and prioritising the tracking of young people in this cohort. The not knowns in year 12 is nearly the same as not knowns in year 13. This is a change compared to previous years, as primarily the challenge has been in year 13. The reasoning behind the shift is possibly a couple of things. Data returns much earlier than in previous years, earlier capture of risk of NEAT indicators data, transition data, and also smarter links with the providers out of the area. Finally, data related to young people within other service areas and how this is processed. That may assist reduction in the not known figures that have been looked at. Thank you. Next slide, please, Rose. Okay, we're going to move on now to consider how we're going to work to transform skills development and employment, and our shift in focus from crisis to prevention. This includes an early intervention and prevention model, which is critical to helping the council achieve its strategic priorities set out in the Investing in the Future Cabinet report, which went to Cabinet in January last year. Central to the internal response to the cumulative fall of £730 million in funding for public services over the past decade, and that was the figure that stood at November 2020. So a key outcome measure will be improvement in educational attainment skills in preparing young people for career opportunities and sustained higher skilled jobs. I was absolutely delighted last summer to help launch with the Deputy Leader the Breaking Down Barriers report, which is, you've already heard about before, but this is a significant piece of work, which in particular task partners to focus on helping deliver a range of recommendations. And these include facilitation of accessible work experience opportunities, reshaping careers advice and guidance, creation of a one-stop shop online hub, and delivering a locally designed scheme of employment support for young people and businesses. Secondly, the community recovery strategy will play a key role in ensuring the council can achieve success. Next slide, please. Okay, the rationale for further action through a jobs and skills plan can be seen on the screen here. Birmingham City Council has a leadership role to play in the city. We can't do it on our own, but we're one of the key partners. And the onus is on us to convene partners and initiate a range of actions. So Birmingham City Council is also a large direct employer and procurer and commissioner of services across the city. This means that there is a central place for place leaders, large employers, anchor institutions such as health services, community organisations, and the skills system to lead on action. So there are already strong place-based partnerships in place, particularly in North Birmingham and East Birmingham, and without doubt other parts of the city could benefit from similar actions. The evidence of need and gaps in activity already happening show that there is rationale for 3 areas of further action. Those 3 areas we identify as job creation and the matching, especially for young people, pathways into training and work supported with large employers, local public services, and social care, which supporting communities and expanded place partnerships. Next slide, please. So in consideration of further consideration of ongoing actions, in the short term, continuing over the coming months, There will continue to be existing and effective area-based activity where local employment for residents is a focus. For example, through Whitton Lodge in North Birmingham. We will strengthen existing area-based activity in East Birmingham, including integration of activities with West Midlands Combined Authority and Birmingham City Council, working in conjunction with Pioneer Group and developing a new entry-level and employability scheme for UK SPF or similar funding post-ESIF funded activity. You'll be tested on the acronyms later, I think. Okay, other actions include using the ongoing Enterprise Zone Employment Review to build relationships with and commitments from specific employers and improve access to city centre jobs. We need to ensure that the Levelling Up Plan and associated work on sites and development opportunities is specific about the contract and delivery methods that will deliver employment and community outcomes and will not be driven primarily by GVA or developer financial return. So in the longer term, over the next 6 months, I have the next slide, please. We'll continue with all the work that's gone into place over the course of the pandemic. And at that point, I think I'm going to leave things there and take any questions. We have on the call this morning some of our senior officers from the team, Ilgan, who is the head of service, Armajit, who deals specifically with apprenticeships, and Tara, who is responsible for some of our key projects aiming to reduce unemployment. So happy to take any questions from you. And apologies for the bitterness of the presentation sometimes.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. No, it's expected. I think obviously with technology, I think it went quite well compared to a few others meetings that I've been to. So
I shall take that as a compliment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Ilgan, do you want to add on to that before we open up for questions, or do you just want to go straight to take some questions?
Just to underline that a lot of the focus has been on this combination of immediate short-term recovery and also looking at some of the longer-term issues. And crucial to both of those themes is really the council working more closely and offering that leadership in terms of a strategic response, which is really welcomed by some of the key stakeholders. I mean, the obvious big ones, which Councillor Francis highlighted, Combined Authority, LEP, increasingly the NHS, DWP. And to add to that, we're also working very closely with central government now as part of the Partnerships for People in Place. And we feel that's going to be quite crucial going forward. And that link from very early in the age group, even from primary schools, but right now we're just focusing on secondary schools, to cut across all the different policy and funding policy landscapes will be crucial. So we think it's a challenge out there, but we think we're making really good progress, and most importantly, we want to be in a position where people are benefiting from that recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilgan. So before I open up to questions, I'll take chair's privilege and ask the first question. So I don't know if you're in a position at this moment in time to provide a bit more detail on what work is planned around job matching and upskilling in industries where there is a skills shortage, especially coming out of a pandemic where like you've said that the young, and we are a young city, that have been impacted the most. So what sort of plans are you in the position to provide more details on what you plan to do in matching those young people to these jobs and upskilling in those particular industries where we know that there's a skills shortage? Thank you.
Do you want to start off, Ilgan, and then we might bring Tara and Amajit in to talk about some of the things that are happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Francis. And there's definitely lots of progress in there. So so Kickstarts is very crucial to that, of course. So the council's played its part as a direct employer. We've got 50 as we speak, we've got 50 Kickstart placements now as an employer. We've obviously got apprenticeships, and Amajit can talk more about that. We've also very excited about the work that we're doing with the youth hubs. Okay, so that's something that really got going in partnership with DWP and Combined Authority from September. It's the hub and spokes approach. So we use Library of Birmingham as that central focus, and then some youth centres, both by the council but also partners, including community settings, which is focused on, initially was focused on supporting DWP. So there's that brokerage in terms of people long-term unemployed, mostly sort of 18 to 24 in age group. And we're very excited about a formal launch that we're doing on the 20th of January. I suppose the numbers on that, because the focus has been on Kickstart, and to some degree, it's got that particular referral from DWP. We're still waiting for the numbers to improve, and we're as I said, as may be noted in the report, we're waiting for DWP to come back with those numbers. But I think the significant thing about that is that it's the start of something which is going to be expanded. So it will include a big focus on apprenticeships, and also would include a big focus on people with disabilities and or learning difficulties. And we're looking to also introduce an enterprise element to that. So in other words, we started off with some very clear specifics. Let's get the system working, and then we want to expand it. And of course, we are developing the services by listening to what people are telling us that they want. I think the other thing around the whole kind of skills and brokerage stuff, before I hand over to Amajit and Tara, is that we need to go back a little bit further. Okay, so you've got that career service, and this is what I'm really excited about with the 14 to 19 team, is the working with colleges and schools. What you'll see over the course of this academic year is really enhanced offer, where when schools identify people at risk of need, we will work to put together a bespoke package in terms of a bespoke learning programme over the course of the next few months, and if necessary during that summer break, because it's really crucial that when a conditional offer is offered in those early summer months, that we don't lose young people in the system between June and September time. And we think that's going to be a bit of a game changer. So I think bringing all of those partners together, putting together a bespoke offer, really around what employers are telling us, and bringing employers into the schools, bringing them into that youth hub environment I described earlier, so that employers are telling us a bit more about what's needed, and then we can offer that brokerage. And of course, we did have the jobs fair in November, and that was a huge it's a huge event, but it was also what was beautiful about it was that Aston Villa, did their bit. They hosted it for us. I'm sorry if you're not an Aston Villa supporter. But the serious point about that is that we had employers there offering real opportunities, over 50 of them, and we had 1,000 people come in on that. And maybe Tara can just give us a few more updates on what the follow through on that one was. But that was really employers saying, here are the roles, you can come to us on that day. And as a result of those conversations, we can get you into a post right away. So perhaps on that note, I'll hand over to Tara. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilgen. Tara,
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. And I just, on the point you made, Chair, about jobs matching, I can just provide the information that as a team within Employment and Skills Service, we've got a really long-standing and strong ability to work with the council's developers, bearing in mind that around 85% of the council's expenditure is in capital development, and that's where we focus our aims. And we work with procurement services and look at the social value. And it's really about getting the most beneficial social value agreement with our developers. And we're talking huge developments. I'm sure many of you are well aware that, for example, the Smithfield development in the middle of Birmingham is pretty much a town within a city. It's enormous. So it's giving us a really important trajectory. We've got a number of major sites, including, of course, Peribar Regeneration Scheme, Pedimore site, and many others on site right now. What we are good at is supporting our own provision and other partners like Job Centre Plus to support local unemployed people into those opportunities. We work with colleges and other training providers. And this doesn't happen in all other cities. So we've got a really strong network. And that works for the entry-level jobs. What we're aware of is that this doesn't work as well for young women, and it doesn't work as well in terms of getting local unemployed people into the higher paid jobs in those supply chains, for example, project manager, engineering. And as Ilgan said earlier, that's our next aim. That is saying, right, medium to long term, we need to make sure that our secondary level students look at the built environment as a career and the other strong careers that are available in Birmingham. We talked about industries where there's a real lack of staff at the moment. Hospitality, we work with Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP and Job Centre Plus. They're leading, for example, they held a jobs fair in Broad Street with a number of major hotels in December, and we support them in that. And we look to training opportunities. Adult social care, there is some major work going on there, I think, with key officers. And we're doing our bit. We're making sure that we've got kickstarters coming through into adult social care so that young people have got that opportunity. And we're working with job centres at the youth hubs that we host and that we can staff because we run the Youth Promise Plus project with Prince's Trust. So all these things combine to enable us to work on the ground with young people in youth centres, with the Jobs Centre Plus and at Library of Birmingham. This year we're really starting to bring it all together.
Thank you, Tara. Councillor Francis, did you want to add something onto that before I take another question?
Thank you, Chair, I will, but I think we should bring colleagues in who've had the hand up for quite a while.
Okay.
I'm happy to have, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lal?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I need some clarification, please, on the presentation. On the presentation, it says need by ward, right? Then say need not known by status. So could you see the difference between not known status by ward and obviously I can understand the need by anyone. So why are the two different slides giving confusing description of need? And secondly, the lowest hourly rate. When we have a national minimum wage, then this should be the where we work in the country, in the UK, everybody should be on a national minimum wage, right? And we have no mention of 0 hour contracts. Is that the cause of lower hourly rate? And the other thing is, we know about the low skills base in Birmingham. In some areas, some communities, lower education attainment, higher unemployment, and the desired outcomes. That's what we always, wanted. That was our aspiration. But over the years, we have so many strategies, so many initiatives, and we always seem to improve things while the initiatives were in action. And after that, then back to normal. So what have been happening? We've been having like a sticky ticking plaster job sort of thing. When these teams move on, then we are back to square one. So what can we make sure that the jobs we are creating are going to be sustainable, right? That they are going to be permanent jobs, not only they making a difference So how are we going to monitor progress so that we make a real difference? Thank you.
Elgin, do you want to pick some of those up? Or Tara?
Yeah, if I just go first on that, and then I'm sure Tara or Armit may want to come in. So I think the first question, if I understood it correctly, in terms of what the NEAT. So we've got two types of NEAT metrics. One is people who are simply not in employment, education, or training. And then the other one is the not known, which means that we don't actually know what a particular individual status is. And that's obviously a challenge nationally, and that there are sort of countrywide metrics around that one. So that's the difference between the two. And I suppose that what that chart was showing was that actually we're getting much better at identifying what the individual's doing, and once we've done that, obviously in a much better place to support them. The one around the second question and point is probably not unrelated to the third one, if I may make that link. So the one around the wage and also those sustainable jobs. We know, and the Combined Authority, the Ready Institute at the University of Birmingham, as well as our own analysis, is telling us that medium to long term, those sustainable jobs, those better paid jobs, are going to be requiring a skill set that too many of our people, when they leave school, or adult learners who are reskilling, will need to acquire. And I do think that is part of what we're talking about when we talk about setting in place those medium to long term. So, at the moment, schools have their own statutory responsibility for careers advice. We as a council have statutory responsibility for 16 to 19 in terms of careers advice. We have a 14 to 19 team. The crucial thing is actually fully understanding what that careers offer is in schools, and I would suggest that there's very much a willingness there from schools themselves to work with us, to work with employers, so that we can start actually looking at that careers advice and where we need to make changes in terms of those support progression pathways, that we do that. When I talk about long term or medium term, this is not something that we're sort of saying we're going to do this sometime in the future. This is work that's taken place at the moment. If you refer to the element on SEND and inclusion in the report, the written report for this scrutiny committee, there is a very clear and major piece of work that's taken place, for example, around SEND and inclusion work stream, where we're looking to have a 14 to 29 progression pathway, and that's a very practical outcome that we want in place for the next academic year starting 22-23. So we want to make sure we've got an inclusive approach. I do think the crucial one is to bring employers in. An example of that, and Tara's been doing a lot of work with this one, again, some short-term benefits is what are employers looking for? Do they always need 5 GCSEs, A to C or equivalent? And the NHS really trailblazed innovation here by saying, actually, we just want to focus on those roles and behaviours. So I do feel that that pay and productivity, okay, is linked, and ultimately it's about supporting people to get those better paid jobs, which is also going to help with people in terms of their wider life outcomes. So that would be my immediate sort of comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilgen. So I'll move on to Councillor Cornish, who's patiently been waiting.
Thank you, Chairman, and a Happy New Year to all of you. I'm unsure whether to put my video on, and my hair doesn't look too good today. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Oh, he doesn't want that. There you go. Morning. Some of the questions actually that I wanted to ask have already been covered and answered quite good from Ignore just recently. However, as you said that this is probably very much at an early start in everything. We have an awful lot to do as we move forward. And first of all, I want to make sure that, which I know you will, is to keep us up to date with everything that's transpiring and moving forward in a positive way as soon as you can. The jobs fair in November produced an awful lot of interest with 50 companies and 1,000 attending. Would you have at this stage any data on how successful it was in filling any of the vacancies? And adding on from there, any further jobs fair, which I'm sure is something we would all like to see. With the data you receive, I'm quite sure you will be targeting specific industries, as we mentioned a bit later. One of the things we have difficulties in is in engineering, which I think is something that is great for young people. I had someone come and do something in the garden recently that was at university, and suddenly decided, I'm not happy here. Let me see what else I can do. And he joined HS2. And while away he's going, it just happens. So I think working along those lines is what we need. And I'd also ask the third question, please. The apprenticeship levy transfer support for the small businesses. Would you know at this stage the companies that are actually taking part and what your expectations would be? I mean, 70K, I think it is, isn't it, that you've supported on the apprenticeship side, and it would be good for us to know what we've actually achieved with that. Thank you.
I come in briefly. Maureen, Councillor Cornish, thank you. You asked really important questions. Can we work backwards and bring Armajit in to talk about the apprenticeships? Because that's a biggie for us, I think, at the moment. Armajit?
Yep. Good morning,
Good
Nettie.
morning
Hello.
to you.
In regards to your questions there, Councillor, so in terms of the apprenticeship levy, obviously we got that up and running towards the summer part of the year in partnership with the LEP, who are going to be supporting us in engaging with the smaller SMEs in the city to make them aware of what we've got available. So obviously in the few months that it has been available, we've managed to commit over £70,000. That £70,000 so far has been to support apprenticeships with one of our independent schools, so who are looking to actually bring in new apprentices as part of their workforce. And some of the ones have been related around, they put through teaching assistant and I believe a community sports activity apprenticeship. So it's at the school looking to develop their kind of sport offering. Obviously, we are having regular communications with the LEP around making sure that our offer is being promoted, that the money is there, and that we do want to support SMEs within the city. We are also having active conversations with the Combined Authority, who have agreed to support and make businesses aware that the council is now gifting its apprenticeship levy and wants to support SMEs. We did initially agree a kind of criteria of who we would prefer to support in line with what our council objectives are of what we're trying to achieve across the city, but obviously we will consider applications as and when they do come in. So I think for a couple of months that it's been live, to be able to commit £70,000 is really quite promising to start off with. One of the other things, just to kind of make you aware in relation to your jobs fair, the council is actually supporting an apprenticeship fair that's being led by Combined Authority and an apprenticeship network, which is going to be hopefully subject to COVID, taking place at Millennium Point. So we're working with big employers across the city to raise awareness of the apprenticeship opportunities that are available, will be available, and also in giving those careers advice to young people. So the last one, I believe, which was prior to COVID, over 10,000 young people attended. So, you know, hopefully if we can engage in similar sort of levels, you know, there would hopefully be a lot of kind of eye-opening for young people to make them aware of the opportunities that are available in the city, and obviously aware of all the different types of industries. So you talked about the person that you had from university coming to do some work, and it opened eyes to similar different careers. We've done a lot of work internally within the council to actually make sure we're promoting our apprenticeship opportunities as well, and to make sure that people are aware that you're not just limited to what you might be doing a degree in, and to open up career pathways. So that's some of the real positive work that we're doing, is that long term we're looking at how we can support our long-term workforce planning by looking at how we can start creating career pathways and engaging with all the different directorates to say, actually, instead of bringing someone who might already be fit and ready to go, let's look long-term and start actually look how we can support, whether it's a young person or a person from a particular background, to make sure we've got an inclusive approach to attracting people to create long-term career pathway opportunities. So there is a lot of work that is going on behind the scenes in that respects as well. So, for example, we've done a lot of 3 different recruitment campaigns in procurement, finance, and within HR, where I work at the moment. And what we've done is to ensure that we're outreaching as far as possible. We've engaged with all our local partners, whether it's universities, the colleges, even our local charity partners, to make them aware, to push our vacancies out. So we're reaching as far out as possible. And that's been reflected in actually the people that we've appointed. So we've just recently appointed 4 within HR. When you were to look at the demographics of what we've appointed, it was 3 females to 1 male. There was 2 from minority backgrounds. 1 was actually a single mother who's got a career change. They're all from within the Birmingham region. So we are really making sure that we're outreaching as far as possible and giving everyone an opportunity. I think if I hand over to maybe Tara or Ilgun for the first 2 questions that maybe Councillor Cornish asked, if that's okay.
That's a very thorough answer. Thank you, Armajit, about apprenticeships. Ilgun,
Yes, thank you very much. It was very useful.
Thank you. I think Tara might be best placed to talk about those kind of data updates that Councillor Cornish was asking for. Tara, can I hand over to you on that one?
Yes, thank you. Yes, in terms of the jobs fair at Aston Villa, we did get just over 1,000 people attended, as Councillor Cornish noted, and the immediate information from the day that we could gather from all the employers and providers attending was that over 250 people applied for a job or an apprenticeship route on that day. We're still following up with all the employers, and there were many more people who showed interest in other routes, for example, training routes. It's obviously difficult, especially over the Christmas period, to gain further information from employers, but we are hoping to have a full report on that, likely to be in February. And this will also help inform us. We've had some tremendous feedback anecdotally from providers and employers attending. One of them saying she's got a long career, it's literally the best jobs fair she's ever attended from an employer perspective, because it was so well organised. There were so many people attending who, you know, did find the jobs that we had on offer relevant, etc. So I think that does pay tribute to the co-design of the event that we did with Job Centre Plus and West Midlands Combined Authority, to really try and bring the range of accessible employment as well as career choices. We are looking to hold these events, these larger scale events, more regularly, and I'm very glad to say that we've had another offer from another major sports site to hold a second event at the end of March. So we're going to be building on the success of that event, and we've also had contact from councillors and Job Centre Plus and others about holding more localised events, and we really need to look at what we can do with quality that's properly organised. But I do know that there are so many jobs fairs happening. A lot of them are focused on young people and have been focused on Kickstart. And that will look to change as Kickstart comes to an end in this quarter. And there'll be more focus on careers-based outcomes, such as apprenticeships that have been mentioned today. And I think that will help to address some of the points made earlier by Councillor Lau in terms of having that careers view and having that sustainable employment as an outcome. So that's the jobs fair answer that I think addresses the question, I hope.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara and Amajit, for those responses. Just on the jobs fairs, I don't know how committee members feel. If I just throw it in there, whether you could open up a visit for members for us as a committee to attend jobs fairs. So I think I've attended jobs fairs in the past, and I think they can be quite good when they're done right, I think. But obviously I'll open it up to committee members and maybe we could discuss it later on. But just I think it'd be interesting for us to be able to visit. Obviously, the pandemic permitting, we're in quite uncertain times at the moment, but I think it'd be quite interesting and useful for us to attend one of these events. Councillor Francis, you're next on my list.
Thank you very much. I've got a number of notes, but just to pick up on what you just said, I think the suggestion that as a committee you might go out and see a job fair in action is a very positive one, because it makes a real difference. One of the other things that you might wish to consider, and I would be happy to support this, facilitate and then support, is to hear some evidence in particular as a committee from young people themselves, because that's certainly an approach that we use with both breaking down the barriers and the more recently launched digital exclusion strategy. And there are two key things emanating from those pieces of work for young people in particular. One of them was about access to equipment, digital inclusion, and about support for mental health. And those two very, very important issues can be absolute deal breakers as far as young people are concerned to enable them to make a decision. And I think it would be useful for you as a committee, not just to hear from us as politicians and officers, but to hear from young people themselves. The other thing that I wanted to, well, a number of things I wanted to throw in, if I may, they're not necessarily questions, but points for discussion or consideration for a further work stream for this committee. Obviously, this is a really, really important year for Birmingham. 2022 is going to see the Commonwealth Games, which is just one of the biggest things this city's ever experienced. And there will be a whole host of opportunities that arise from that, both in terms of employment and for our business sector as well. And secondly, Councillor Cornish rightfully mentioned HS2, which is continuing to make progress. I am particularly keen to see an expansion of careers advice, which includes engineering and sort of non-traditional areas of work with young people. So they've got some real choices to make. And we talked, someone earlier, I think it's Alvin, talked about career service in schools. We have to make sure that I think the quality of that career service is as good as it possibly can be, so our young people can make real choices. Final thing that I wanted to say, it's certainly within the last 6 months, I've spent time certainly in my own ward and in the city centre talking to local businesses who, without doubt, have been absolutely hammered, particularly our hospitality sector. And I know from speaking to local businesses in recent weeks in my ward, there are some employers are having to close down their businesses very early during the working day because they haven't got staff. And that's been totally exacerbated by COVID and the number of people calling off sick. So I would like as a committee for you to consider what the key sectors are in Birmingham. And there are huge levels of investment coming to the city, which we sometimes don't know about. So, for example, creative sector is a biggie in Birmingham in terms of filming, TV, programme making, and that again offers up a range of apprenticeship opportunities for our young people who might be interested in those. Hospitality is certainly a big one in our city centre with bars and restaurants. And again, I think it's something that's been a poor relation in terms of employment for people. And those businesses themselves need that support as well to make sure that that match is taking place between them as proprietors of businesses and young people. Finally, we have in Birmingham a thriving, and it's survived incredibly well, arts and cultural sector, which is part of my portfolio, of course, but they're big employers as well. And they've had good government support with the Cultural Recovery Fund in the past 12 months. But there's an issue again, just as we go in 2022, with things reopening, all of a sudden the numbers are down again. And when I have spoken with chief execs of particular arts organisations, there were times last year when they weren't able to perform, to give out performances because they didn't have back staff for things like shift, what's the word? Sorry. Staff to support performances. So it could be electrical or a whole range of careers that we just take for granted that are invisible. You know, people who do shift things on stages and all the rest of it. So I'm just wondering, Chair, if there is a piece of work to look at how we can be better informed about those different sectors that play such a key part of our economy in Birmingham over the next 6 to 9 months, I guess. I'm just throwing that in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Francis, and we can certainly consider that as a committee, definitely.
Okay.
I'll move on because I'm aware of our time. So I'll move on to Councillor Morrell, who I know is not feeling well. So thank you, Councillor Morrell, for waiting patiently.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. And yeah, so just for the audience at home, I'm currently suffering with COVID, so I'm certainly not going to put my my camera on. But thank you, Councillor Francis. Always a pleasure to have you on this committee and to listen to your presentation. Of course, the opening slide, very, very depressing reading, and it clearly states, you know, Birmingham, even before COVID, unemployment was around double the UK average. And really high youth unemployment, which obviously being a very young city is also quite sad. But it does also note here that some of the barriers to local people taking up jobs is awareness of said opportunities. And you will know on this committee 4 years now, I believe I'm the longest serving member. I've always talked about joined up marketing strategies. And on one of the slides, there were so many strategies, and we often on the council talk about what are these strategies. Like I would have liked to have seen a marketing strategy in there. And I think what Amarich has said, I apologise if I've mispronounced your name. I think you've hit the nail on the head there where you're talking about outreaching as far as possible. And I think you have demonstrated there what I've been trying to say for years here, that you need to be sitting down with key stakeholders and saying, right, how are we reaching young people in this city? Because young people access opportunities and information in completely different ways to how we do. You know, we can't just expect them to go to the job centre and tick boxes or go to the local library. And we mentioned the skills fairs. These are a perfect example. We did one in Franklin in September with the West Midlands Mayor, and again, incredibly successful. Loads of people coming in off the state trying to find jobs and opportunities. We had people arriving from as far as Yardley and Wombourne to Franklin. The following month we had one in Southend City College, again very similar footfall, and you guys have mentioned the one obviously in Aston, and there was one in Broad Street where again loads of people arriving to find opportunities. So the appetite is clearly there. And what's interesting about these jobs fairs is I found out about the two on Broad Street and Aston via Facebook. So we were using the modern techniques there. So if we're using them for our jobs fairs, if we had that joined up marketing strategy, we could do it for so much more. So those are the key points I wanted to make. One of the point, mental health as well. I totally agree with everything Jane just said there about the mental health stuff, and actually speaking to young people around that, because I think that's also something that comes up a lot. I'm just going to go through some of the key bullet points that I think haven't been mentioned. Breaking down barriers report. I'd love it if you can go into more detail about that, because it sounds very interesting. You mentioned the place-based partnerships. I noticed they talk about the north and the east a lot. Is there anything happening in the south of Birmingham? We get the enterprise zones. People have to forget about enterprise zones, don't they? What are the status with those at the moment? And do we know if we have any plans to expand those? And that leads me into entrepreneurship. You know, I'm always talking about entrepreneurship. If you could talk about that. Commonwealth Games, I think Jane's touched on that. Final two, working class boys. Again, something else I'm always talking about. Working class boys, as statistically at the bottom of the, well, they're only above the traveller community in terms of academic attainment. 9% go to university. The figures have been getting worse and worse for the last 2 decades. What are we doing to look at working class boys? And finally, a bit of housekeeping. Do we know if the Q4 labour market figures have been released yet? Because I can't find them, and I wanted to have them at hand before this committee. Thanks, quite a lot there. I hope you got it all in. But
Can I come in the first instance?
James, thanks very much.
Well, Morale, that the Q4 figures have come through yet. If so, I've not seen them.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think Q4 ends in December, doesn't it? So I'm probably expecting it to be next week.
Yeah. You've raised a number of things, and invariably what happens when you and I are in the same room, I often agree with everything that you say and vice versa. In some respects, I absolutely take on board your points about entrepreneurship. We don't do enough to promote that as an option amongst young people. As far as marketing of activities is concerned, there is absolutely always room for improvement, both internally and externally. And we just have to be very clever about considering how people access information and what the limitations are of that as well. And the sort of 21st century all digital approach doesn't work for everybody. It just excludes some. So it has to be a twinned effect. One of the things I was going to suggest, I'm really pleased, Councillor Murrell, that you are interested in breaking down barriers, because it's a significant piece of work, and I will be held to account as Cabinet Member for the deliverables on that. So I'm wondering if at some point this year you'd like to have this as a real big agenda item, and I'll come back and talk through it. And perhaps that could be tied in with my suggestion about bringing in some young people as well to talk about their experience, so it's not just me talking about a report. If we want to go ahead with that with as much notice as possible, I'll try and help facilitate that.
Yeah, well, I'm happy. I like the sound of that.
You're happy with that? Okay, that's good. That's good. We'll leave it there, because there's plenty to do, but essentially I don't disagree with anything you've said. Okay, Chair?
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come in on that, or is that?
Yeah, Chair.
Yep.
I was just wondering if the two officers could answer the other questions I had.
Yeah.
Ones about
apologies. Sorry.
The enterprise zones and the what else? What was the other one? Oh yeah, the place-based partnerships and anything happening in the south.
Right. Okay. So yes, we've been working with LEP on the enterprise zones. I think I'll hand over to Tara a bit more, because she's been doing that more detailed work on the ground on that one. But just before I do, again. Like Councillor Francis said, I agree. There's plenty more that we can do in that area of enterprise, and I think it's also about involving employers, and of course, in this particular case, involving entrepreneurs more in the service design. So I think one of the key things that I want to do with the youth hubs is, as I touched on earlier, is have the enterprise element on it, but actually not people like me Okay, we need to actually have some well-respected entrepreneurs, and there's obviously lots of them out there and locally as well. And I think that's going to be key. And I think that is a little bit of, to use that ghastly phrase, a little bit of a paradigm shift, not just for how we work, but actually across the whole sector. I think, generally we focused on large employers historically, to some degree SMEs, but not enough around entrepreneur. And it's not just about entrepreneurship, but it's also about different ways of working in terms of how people approach working lives these days in very different ways from traditional. And in particular, I think that comes back to that careers advice as well. And I do think that we don't do enough, and we need to do more. We will be doing more around the kind of advice that people are getting both in schools but also post 16. So one of the things that we're doing strategically on that one is we do work. There's something called the Sector-Based Work Academy. Okay, and that's a very, very, I would say, neat 4 to 6 week work package with small employers, but also enterprise. And perhaps I think we could take that one forward. So I think on the whole, enterprise is definitely, I think, the missing bit of the puzzle here, and I think we probably need to develop. In fact, Tara and I were on the line on this before Christmas, that we need to involve the strategic plan in there, and in fact, one of the things that we need to do is crucially to this, in the Breaking Down Barriers report, is your question about taking things to the south, is that a lot of the work and priority is at the moment focused on the east and the north, and I suppose we've done a lot of that in the conversations today. But we do also recognise, as that heat map showed by Councillor Francis, that there is a need to focus across the city, and I think that will be the next step going forward for this year, is how we still build on East Birmingham, but actually how we focus on those other areas. Because if there's one thing the pandemic has shown us, is that actually areas that were previously either untouched or previously not highlighted are very much now the focus of our attention. So regards the enterprise bit, I'm just going to hand over to Tara, who can talk a little bit more about our work with LEP on that and elsewhere.
Thank you. Yes, I do agree. There's some excellent community-based work going on in other parts of the city, for example, the Northfield Community Partnership. But there isn't that sort of wider area-based work as there is in the east and the north, and it's something that we want to support, as Ilgan said. We are working on entrepreneurship, but it needs to become a greater focus for us. We are working with those who have the leadership on it, including Greater Birmingham Solihull LEP. They have funded an application made by Solihull Council to fund some pop-up business school support. So it's about business startup, and it's 2-week support that can be based wherever with a group of people. But it's really trying to build on the entrepreneurship that's arisen through COVID, of people, having, living room activities, as well as wider job and, business career plans. So it can take people right from ground zero through to a business, and what we're looking to do is merge that with our youth hubs. So we're looking to hold one of those, if possible, at the youth hub at Library of Birmingham, and then there's a handover at 2 weeks to the wonderful support that happens for business startup at Library of Birmingham. So these are just some of the things that we're trying to pull together without replacing anything that's already happening. We do want to work. We're also working, for example, through the redundancy task force, which actually supports people of all ages and employers, pulling together that work across all agencies. So, for example, with the sad news of the closure at GKN, we've been working with them and partners, and that includes entrepreneurship support, because a lot of people with a lot of work skills will look at starting their own business. So at the moment, it's strands, and we need to keep developing and building on these things. And we're very appreciative of working with employers and with other agencies on that. In terms of enterprise zones, we are working with GBSF again, who have this sort of management in combination with the council in terms of the enterprise zone in the city centre. And they're investing in additional support as they look to refresh their investment plan for the zone. They're doing some extra sector study as to what the businesses in that area need currently and will need, and that report's just coming to fruition. And they're also looking to invest in staff time to build on that sector work that Councillor Francis, you were talking about earlier. So there's some real in-depth work going on there that will actually help us to understand wider areas as well. And in terms of whether there are going to be further plans for increased enterprise zones, I do know that the Levelling Up proposal is looking at ways that fiscal instruments, let's put it like that. So I know that the Inclusive Growth team and the partnership behind the planning side and the Levelling Up are certainly looking at that as part of the national, as the proposal that went into a national level.
Thank you very much for that, Tara. Councillor Lal, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. First, I haven't had any answer to my question. Do we have any zero-hour contract impact on the income of the residents who are in employment, but they are working on zero-hour contract? Secondly, there are some people, for whatever reason, they don't want to take employment. So what's being done to motivate them to make sure that they do take up a job when there's so many jobs going? Obviously, that's impacting on our employment figures if people are intensely don't want to take up a job. And thirdly, out of all these initiatives putting through at the moment, do we have targets of how many people we intend to take off the unemployment register? So that in that way we will know that we are going to make a difference to the unemployment rate in Birmingham. So do we have targets of how many sustainable jobs we're going to make? Well, not the jobs are there to fill, but the people are either through lack of skill or lack of education that they can't take up the jobs. So how many people are going to put back into employment from the unemployment register? Thank you.
Right. So in terms of our youth employment services, we're funded from the European Social Fund, and against that there are targets. So last summer our funding was confirmed for the last batch of ESF funding, which takes us up to December, the end of 23. And for the next 2 years, as there have been since its inception with us in 2014, I believe, we've had annual targets as well as cumulative ones. So against that, you will have targets for job outcomes, for progression into education or some kind of training program, and it's all for people who are traditionally furthest away from jobs and training and employment and so forth. Tara, would you be able to just comment on some of what the figures behind that in terms of answering the question?
Yeah, absolutely. We do try to ensure that our projects are of a scale to have impact on the youth employment figures in the city, although it is very difficult, given everything else goes on in the city, to have a cause and effect relationship plan, but we try to make sure we work at scale. So obviously, prior to COVID, our scale of support for around 1,500 of the most vulnerable NEET young people in the city, related to the scale of NEET young people in the city, which was at around 8,000. So it's obviously that proportion has changed dramatically with the dramatic increase in unemployment in the city. And also we have to bear in mind that some of our work, the data is from Job Centre Plus in general, and actually some of the young people we work with aren't claimants at the point we work with them, because we're trying for earlier support, and so all the investment we put into the Careers and Youth Service doesn't show in those unemployment figures. So whilst we try to have a baseline that makes sense, because we cut across the NEET and the unemployed figures, it can be difficult to set that up. I know that a lot of the work that ILGAN's doing on the back of the economic recovery plans is to bring together an action plan that actually makes sense, and that we can set those targets as clearly as possible across partnerships. And so that's ongoing work. I hope that helps to explain why I can't give an extremely clear answer, because we work across groups with young people. In terms of all age, so over 30s, we don't have an intervention target within employment and skills in terms of supporting individuals. We work more from the supply side, so making sure that the jobs that are coming through from the council and partners are being made available to the huge providers of adult education and Job Centre Plus provisions such as Restart, so that we are enabling linkages to local jobs, and we're trying to move more and more to actually having that coordination and influencing role, and making sure that those other agencies are doing their role.
Thank you, Tara. Councillor Lal, does that answer your question?
Yeah, this is what I mean. I'm like everybody else on this committee. One makes sure whatever we do, all the initiatives we undertake are going to make a real difference, and they're sustainable. Not, as I say, my experience has been over the past decades is that whatever we do seems to be like a sticking plaster job, and it's not a permanent solution. So I'm frustrated on behalf of the agents and the people unemployed that we do get them hope and give them real jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lal. Thank you. I think we'll move on, and just before I bring you in, Councillor Francis, I was just wondering whether, obviously, coming out of the pandemic, we've had a lot of children that have been, missed a lot of school and things like that. So I was just wondering whether there was any plans or in terms of any training or upskilling around social skills, communication skills planned to kind of tackle that sort of, this period of, because I know I'm a mum myself, so I've got children in school, and in terms of how it's affected children, not just their mental health, but I think in terms of this certain skills, especially children who are possibly finishing secondary school and moving on to sort of higher education, college and stuff like that. They haven't had the normal sort of transitions that they would have had and that support. So I'm just wondering whether there was any work planned around that.
I think, if I may, Chair, there will be some discussions to be had with schools over the next few weeks. It's very early in the new term. Most schools only going back today, and we've got a landscape which is just getting worse by the day as far as children going off sick with COVID and staff. So I think that's going to be something I'm going to have to come back to you with some information there when we look at what support's going to be available for young people. I just wanted to add a couple of other things, if I may, that aren't really related to that, Chair. When I've been listening to the conversation this morning and continuing to think about the key sectors in Birmingham and about business support and employment opportunities, one of the biggest, which I'm absolutely delighted with, is, and many people might not know this, is tourism in the city. Huge hugely attractive. Even with COVID over the past couple of years, numbers of people visiting the city have just shot up. And next year, the eyes of the world will be on Birmingham as we have the Commonwealth Games. I managed a couple of years ago to secure resources for a tourism officer. First of all, thinking there's going to be a virtual information type desk at the University of Birmingham. We have a real life person who's doing a fantastic job and working very, very hard with our external partners to make sure that Birmingham during this year and next year continues to be a real destination for visitors. That's a really important part of our local economy. And of course, that in turn adds value to our hospitality sector, hotels, restaurants, bars, transport, all the rest of it. So let's not lose sight of that in 2022. The other thing I wanted to, two more things, sorry, I wanted to add. Do not ever underestimate the importance and value of our academic sector in terms of universities and FE providers. In particular, Birmingham has got world-class universities, and they're very, very keen to have an even better relationship with the City Council. And I'm meeting up with some colleagues from Birmingham University at the end of January to look at how as a university we might have improved linkages around arts and culture, for example. And universities are almost like mini businesses in themselves. You know, they are huge generators of wealth, and it's in their interest to get young people to want to come to Birmingham to spend 3 or 4 years studying. It's in their interest to say that Birmingham is the place to do that Birmingham is the place to get your degree or get your apprenticeship, and try and keep that cohort that comes to Birmingham, and to make sure we don't have that drain on skills. So I think that's a really important set of relationships. I know the leader and the deputy leader works, and our chief exec work very hard to make sure that those relationships are productive. 2 more things, sorry. 2 more things. On a business side of things, we should not underestimate the value of the BIDs, business improvement districts, which have been hugely successful across Birmingham, both in terms of support for small businesses, in particular hospitality and retail, and also about how they make our neighbourhoods, our local centres, very good places to live and work. And my final point is that there's often lots going on outside of the city in terms of support for young people. I'm talking now in terms of outside of the City Council. Lots of things going on in terms of how we support young people as businesses and employers. So, for example, I am part of a business network that does things like goes into schools and talks and gives young people some support in how they develop interview skills, and that is one-off ad hoc thing. People come together, give a couple of hours of their time, and it's really successful. And there are pockets of that going on across the city. I think, you know, Amjit and I had the pleasure a couple of months ago of being at the Apprenticeship Awards dinner, and that was a really good example of people from different sectors coming into our city to support young people and to celebrate the fact that despite of the enormous challenges that they've faced over the past couple of years, our young people are often doing all right. So it's very easy to get lost in some gloom and doom. And we can't forget that there are pockets of support that's really, really needed, but there are also some young people that are doing really, really well. What we want, and I think what we should be tasked with, is how we make sure that as many of our young people as possible do really, really well. All right, rant over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Amajit, I think you've got your hand raised. Would you like to
come in, Chair, with the point that you made about what support's available for those people that might be finishing secondary school and going into higher education. One of the things that we're looking at as a council is developing our traineeship offer. So a traineeship offer is a programme for people that are finishing secondary school and ultimately looking to explore other pathways such as an apprenticeship, but sometimes there's that bridge that's needed between finishing school and going to an employment. So that a traineeship program is that kind of bridge about getting people work ready. So ultimately what we want to do is to develop a program so that we can actually then, people that want to go into an apprenticeship, they could possibly start with a traineeship, get work ready, understand how it is to, communicate in the working world, learn a bit of business acumen and so forth. But then also working alongside Ilgan and Tara's team, we're getting these young people ready for employment. So if we can't then offer apprenticeships within the council, at least we know that there's opportunities in the wider city that could be available. So we can then go to businesses and say, actually, we've got a group of young people who've completed a traineeship, they're work ready. What opportunities do you have available? So then supporting to increase those employment opportunities across the city for them. So that's something that we're currently working on and trying to get off the ground, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Amjad. Do any other members have any questions? Because I can't see anyone's indicated. Otherwise, thank you. Ilgan, I know you raised your hand a couple of times, but then it seems like you changed your mind. No.
Thank you for bringing me into the conversation, if I may. So I was really touched by that question around job ready, or sometimes known as soft skills. I mean, that's crucial. I mean, really, that's the thing that when employers say that they need support, that's often what they want support with, is getting people, with the right behaviours, the right attitudes, both for self-management, working as a team, bringing out other skills such as critical thinking skills. In some cases, it's starting off at the beginning, such as punctuality, time management. So all of those soft or transferable skills are really key. And I think the other, just linking that to one of the questions earlier around preparing people for the world of work and vacancies. So one thing I wanted to add is that as part of one of the recommendations behind the Breaking Down Barriers report is to have a one-stop online hub. So yes, we will always need face-to-face and locality engagement and support for people, but what 2,000, the response was from that Breaking Down Barriers survey, 2,000 young people were engaged. There's actually quite a lot out there, and people can feel either confused or overwhelmed. Or in some cases, the portals with job opportunities just doesn't work for them. It's either too cumbersome or doesn't spell out the particular roles that you need for a job. So you might get a very obscure job title and people can't see their way to getting that job in terms of, how does my skill set, whether they're formal or not, match up to what's being asked? And it may sound like a really detailed point, but actually it's all about details. So the action point from that is that, and I didn't put it in the report in terms of highlighting it, but I think it's really, really crucial that to know that we're very close to agreeing a partnership with the combined authority to put our energy around one online hub, and that will be promoted and released early in the new year. And particularly, we want to involve young people in putting that design together, and also to help us to monitor it to make sure it's fit for purpose and understood. Another thing to say more strategically is that I'm working again with the combined authority, who of course have responsibility for the adult education budget, which is the skills budget for 19+. We work very closely in general, but one of the particular projects that we will be starting early in January is a review of the offer across the whole city. Obviously, the combined authority have an adult education budget for the whole of the region, but our focus, of course, will be closer home. So what we'll be doing with that is actually, to what degree does it match what's required out there in terms of labour market intelligence? To what degree have we got the providers delivering where it's needed? For example, do we have duplication in one area, i.e. maybe too much in Eastern Birmingham? and what about any gaps? And then that will filter through, the findings from that will filter through into the curriculum offer. And then the last thing to say, I think, on this note, is that adult education, Birmingham adult education, we have in any typical year 10,000 enrolments. About 45%, and this is pre-COVID, of those people are declared as unemployed and actively looking for work. And about 1,000 of those enrolments actually fall into that age group of 21 to 29. So, and increasingly that's the pattern for adult education, in terms of 19 plus. So I think what we've done is that we have set up partnerships with people such as South and City, where we've got a progression pathway where somebody can come to their education service, get those basic skills, technical ones such as reading and writing, confidence with everyday maths, or learning the language, but also linking in some vocational element. And then they will get that fast track place onto South and City, and we're hoping to do something similar with other colleges. And next in the pipeline will be Birmingham Met. So I think it's about, again, that council offering that practical leadership, and there is an increasing recognition that actually, that thing about soft and transferable skills will be key, and linking it to the labour market intelligence. And just on that labour market intelligence, if I may, just that final comment from me, you would have noted in the report around partnerships for people in place. One of the key strands that's behind that is that we are bringing together, data experts from the University of Birmingham for pre-16 education and post-16, and we're also linking with their counterparts at the respective central government departments. And crucially, what we want to do is break down that barrier at 16 and really just have that one fluent pathway. And the pilot, which will start in financial year 22-23, will be focused on a small scale project along those lines, with very much of a view of how we can scale it up across the city. So there's lots of things that we're doing, and I think some of it is very much business as usual, and some of it is really literally breaking down barriers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ilgan, and I'll thank you for that, and I'll bring in Tara, because I know you've got your hand raised as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the time. Just to say on the soft skills and mental health, I think this is one of the things where our provision is strong, in that we are channeling the European funds that we currently use for youth employment into the Career Service, Youth Service, Prince's Trust and others, so that every young person who's noted as at risk of NEET or NEET, in that sort of school transition leaving point, the Career Service have the capacity with our funding to follow up with that young person and give them support, even as they become NEET, even if school funding isn't there. We've then got the funding to work with them so that we can cover that transition from the school period. And the mentoring method within the project is very much about that combination of confidence and mental health, and the support of the individual to realise their own strengths and to develop their strengths for their next steps. We also, through the funding and through the collaboration of the partners, we use some of the funding to fund local organisation Better Pathways to provide mental health support to the young people on our project of up to 12 weeks, professional mental health support, which really is crucial at the moment. The offer runs alongside their sort of career progression support. So that's available to all the NEET young people that we can get onto the project. So there is a really strong offer there, which I hope is actually seen as something we can be proud of. And we want to work with partners to maintain all of that. We've got the funding for the next 2 calendar years, and we want to make sure that can build and progress.
Thank you, Tara. Do any members have final questions or comments before I hand over to Councillor Francis for final, just a summary? No, I can't see any members indicating any further questions. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Francis, just to sort of finish off.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come to this committee, this Scrutiny committee, because the policy of discussion is always fairly good, I think, with some very solid actions to go through. I think I've made a couple of offers today to come back with different things to do things, because I think our priorities have got to be young people next year. And our second priority has got to be how we support businesses and employers, because without them, we can't ourselves deliver the sorts of opportunities we want. So I suppose as someone with this as portfolio holder, I want to see some real action. I want to see us delivering the goods. We've spent a lot of time in recent years talking and strategizing and producing reports. We need to see some evidence of action. I need to be able to walk around the city and have conversations with our partners and with young people to say, yes, we're doing this. And this is what the end result is going to be. So it's evidence of what we're doing. That's going to be hugely important. So I absolutely welcome the opportunity to come back and speak with you in a couple of months. I always take on board what councillor colleagues say to me, and I do take thinking away. And as ever, the sort of work that I do and the bridge between employment and skills and education has never been closer. Absolutely never been closer. So for me in particular, schools are likely to have a really difficult time in the next few weeks. So the onus on me is to make sure that we as a city can support our schools and those actually providing that basic stuff to our children and young people so they can get things right. But there is lots of work to be done, and I would like to see us in at least 6 months' time coming back to you with and being part of a programme of work that's actually going to make a real difference to who we are and what we do. That's what we will all be judged against. And essentially, that's why we're here. Is that okay? Thank you very much for that, Councillor Francis. And we will definitely, I mean, one of our next items on the agenda is our work programme. So, you know, we welcome your offer to come again. And I know, you know, all of us on this committee are really passionate about, you know, youth employment and skills. So we'll definitely, you know, we do welcome the offer for you to come back and so we can do some, you know, real work around that together. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Francis, Ilgan, Amajit and Tara for coming along today and providing us with a detailed report. So thank you very much. Stay safe, all of you. There was a lot of information in that, a lot of figures. If anyone subsequently has any queries, do get back to either me or the team, and we will endeavour to put a written response in place if something's not been clear today. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other businessy things, or do I go and make some coffee now? No, I think that's it, because we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our programme discussion. So you don't really need to stay. Right. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much. Thank you. Simon, get better soon, and everybody else take care. It's messy out there. Okay. Speak to you all very soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, so Councillor Morel?
He's gone. No, so I was going to say Councillor Francis could have stayed for the work programme because we could figure out what date would be better for her. But never mind. Yeah, we'll discuss it, and then we can always get back to her with that. That shouldn't be a problem. We'll move on to we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the work programme. There are a couple of items that the committee has been requested to look at, and obviously today we've had Councillor Francis offer to come back again.
I mean, the first one was the motion to the City Council by Councillors Cotton and Iro in December, which was on the Council's approach to small businesses and small business cooperatives. It was agreed that the committee would investigate further, and I propose that this is looked at the February's meeting. So do any members have any questions or comments on that? Councillor Morell?
Yes, so just looking at the two next dates, 2nd of February and the 2nd of March, we might have to double up. There was another item that we did on this committee, a big piece of work around assets that's gone off to the executive, and that report was supposed to go to City Council at some point. And I would propose, if it's not going to City Council by February, that we bring that back to actually have a small item. It doesn't have to be a long item, just so we can actually say that we've brought it back to committee to basically question why is it taking so long? Because I've just got a funny feeling that the executive are trying to kick it into the long grass until after the election, because it's quite a big topic. I'm not sure if Kerry is still on the could clarify any information on that.
Yes, happily. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, Kerry, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we are hoping to be able to get that report onto the agenda for council before the end of this municipal year, and would very much be looking to bring that back to committee for a discussion before that's signed off. So we've actually got an informal briefing with the chair to appraise her of where we are with it after this meeting, because obviously Councillor Suleiman wasn't chair during the report evidence gathering and drafting itself. So we would hope to be able to share something with committee in advance of the next committee meeting.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Kerry, and thank you, Councillor Morell, for that. So is there any further comments on that particular item, the council's approach to small businesses and small business cooperatives?
No, but I'm happy to bring it into the February meeting. I'm just wondering whether that could be done alongside the Councillor Francis was talking about the was it now? Let me go back to my notes.
Yeah,
breaking down barriers.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking it would kind of tie in with that, but what we can do is we can check with Councillor Francis because she was saying with a bit of notice, so we can check if possibly we can check with whether it's sufficient enough time for her to prepare for that. Definitely. I mean, there's a second sort of item that we were asked to look at was from the Scrutiny report on exempt accommodation, which was agreed at City Council last month, and set out a recommendation that's tasked this committee with looking at planning enforcement in greater detail, as there's a gap between councillors and residents' expectations with reference to the service being delivered by the planning department. And the recommendation goes on to ask the leader and the relevant overview and scrutiny committee to review existing practices, enforcement policies and procedures. And I know members on this committee have raised this issue in the past, and I'd like to schedule this in for March's meeting. With members.
I think I'd agree with that, because that's more to do with planning, and we've got the East Birmingham inclusive growth. So if we have two planning topics on the same agenda, and then in February we've got all about entrepreneurship and skills and breaking down barriers. So we've kind of got a theme for each event.
Yeah. Does any other members have any questions or suggestions or comments on that? Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is any other urgent business. Do we have any other urgent business that needs to be raised? No, I can't see anyone indicating. That brings us on to item 7, which is authority to chairs and officers. Do I have the authority to act on your behalf between meetings?
Yes, Chair, that's agreed. Authority to act.
Brilliant, thank you all very much. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you next month. Stay safe and look after yourselves.
Thank you, Chair. Take care.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.